Welcome to the Startup Show. I'm your host, John Biggs. In every episode of the Startup Show, we talk to an amazing entrepreneur about how they do what they do. We'll explore tactics, tricks, and techniques for building some of the coolest things on the planet. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Welcome back to the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Ang Lee, CEO and co-founder of Simular AI. Welcome, Ang.
Hi, John.
Yeah. So AI company, obviously from the name, unless you've tried to do something crazy. But tell me about what you're working on.
Yeah, actually, our name is similar. There's no similar AI in there.
Okay.
Because we believe I can tell you the reason why similar is the meaning in there later.
Mhm.
But we are building the infrastructure for agents to use computers like a human. So the computer is gonna click and type. It's not gonna use any APIs or tool integration. This is what we do. And our goal is to transform all of the ordinary computers into autonomous computers. And our focus now is building out the brands of these autonomous computers.
So instead of hitting APIs, instead of doing things in the background, you're basically saying like the computer's going to take control of the mouse and take control of the keyboard and going to just control, right? So does that mean that sounds like actually a fairly interesting concept, because we do have interfaces that we've built up over the last century of computing that are fairly normal. So what you're talking about is basically saying like, this is kind of like, the self-driving car still has a steering wheel and you have to recreate that steering wheel experience or else people get scared. And also all the tools that are built for that situation have to be incorporated. So why don't you tell me about the impetus for that?
Yeah, so basically, as you mentioned, we already have the user interface created for human to use. Then we have to think about what's the end state of the world. When we have autonomous computers, will this interface still exist? So many people argue that, okay, you can potentially use some programming language to code it up, create some, like a lot of APIs for people to use, and then create these agents. But our view is a little bit different. We believe this graphical user interface will still exist because when we have autonomous agents, humans still need to control on the behaviors of these agents. If that's the case, we need a common ground for both agents and humans to play in this same space. And we believe this is the graphical user interface because this is designed for human to use. This is the best place for human to supervise the agents or monitor the agents in the future. That's why we believe, if UI will exist forever, then the best way to create, the fastest way and best way to create autonomous agents is just let agents do whatever human does on this UI.
Are there any special considerations that you have to have when you do this sort of thing? Do you have to slow things down slightly so humans can actually watch?
We don't have to. It's more like when you drive cars, right? It's pretty fast. But if something goes wrong, you have the chance to see the recording. You have the chance to see like what's going on, what's the trajectory of your mouse, and what's the root cause of these problems.
Interesting. And how far along are you with the product?
So these are two questions. One is the technology, and the second is product. So I can start with the technology. So far, there's a popular benchmark called OS World. This is a computer use benchmark. And OpenAI and Anthropic, they are also like playing this benchmark. We are now hitting a little over 40% success rate in OS World and beating OpenAI and Anthropic significantly in there. And the reason is we are creating a computer use agent framework that sits on top of all of the foundation models. And that allows you to switch to different models easily. And then we can always create the best performance of computer use agents better than foundation model companies.
Interesting. So are you open sourcing that, or what are you going to do with that? Because this sounds a lot like the Linux days of like the late 90s when everybody was like making a product, but then they would kind of like, it became the de facto tool, like SMB, for example, of Samba file sharing.
Yeah.
Was originally supposed to be sort of like a clone of Windows file sharing, but it became its own thing, and it eventually became just normal. What you're describing is basically a layer on top of a model that's designed specifically to interact with desktops, like user interfaces.
It's actually multiple models, so it's not a single model framework. Yeah,
so it sounds like it should work with everybody.
Yeah, we open source this framework called AgentS, and a lot of developers are using that right now and contributing as well. And we believe this is important because I was a researcher in the past. I was a researcher in DeepMind before, and personally, I believe the fast speed of the advancement, technical advancement of AI is largely because we open source a lot of stuff in it.
Mhm.
This open culture create this like fast speed for innovation, and we want to contribute it back to. It's really, I feel it's more like a personal choice, and our team is pretty researchy, so we like this open culture. And at the same time, the problem we are solving is very researchy. It's a very researchy problem. Yeah.
And what about the product? It sounds like if you open source this thing, you might not be able to productize it well, but what's your plan there?
Yeah, we spend half of our time open source the research in there. The reason is because we're not 40%, and human level in OS4 is 2%. There's still a gap, meaning to achieve our vision on autonomous computers, we need to get the performance to be better and better over time. So that's why we work on the technology. But the end goal is to have one product, one or more, right? That actually, sitting in front of all of the human users, interacting with the users, make people's life better.
Okay.
And make it so easy everyone can use it. So this is the end goal. Open source technology is just one part of the puzzle, right? And in terms of the product, we had to think about, for now, we are roughly 40%. It's not going to do the most of the job end to end for you, right? Then what's the right way to design a product that make it useful today? And many people are saying, okay, agents are so powerful and you can just delegate tasks to the agent. It's going to complete the task for you, but that's not true. Yeah, even agent can do most of it. You won't give them your Gmail password, right? You won't give them your credit card information. So that's the problem. Even agents are really good. You won't do that. Humans still need to be part of the process, right? If that's the case, when we design the product, we have to think about, okay, if human has to be part of the process, then should we try to create a product that's a common workspace between human users and agents? And if we have that kind of product, we don't have to force the agent to be 100%.
Oh, I gotcha.
Right? Yeah, the agent can do, maybe the agent do 50% or 70% of the job, and human comes and continue the workflows in there. That's why we are designing we plan to release this week, our first desktop agent that has an embedded browser inside the agent. So it's a browsing agent, which can navigate on the websites and try to solve problems for the user. And the user can jump into the process anytime with no latency in a seamless manner. You don't have to change your behavior on browsing the internet. Based on your existing behavior of browsing, you have a chance to ask a question to the agent anytime, and the agent offloads some of the task, maybe 80%, and then you continue your workflow.
You said you were doing work with DeepMind. Why did you decide to move to do your own startup?
Yeah, and that's a long story. In 2017, I joined DeepMind as one of the first few researchers that sits in Google headquarters. Okay. So it's a very unique position. So I spent half of my time researching AGI, and the other half of my time to work closely with all of the Google product teams to apply AI systems into real world.
Interesting.
Then there's one question that I often come back to is what is AGI and how do we approach it? Right, that's my job. So I had to think about this question every day. So basically, the first question is everyone has different definitions, and one thing I know for sure is AGI is something like human, but ultimately it's not human. So this is something I'm completely sure. That's why I came up with the name Similar, because it represents something that imitates. It's something that resembles intelligence without being human. That's why I have the name. And the second question is how do we approach it? And DeepMind in the old days still acting like a big lab working on AI system. But my philosophy is AGI is unlikely to come out from a lab. It needs to be built in public. That means we need something to be in front of every human beings, and people can use it, can benefit from that, and interacting with that AI system. And the reason is because data is the fuel of any AI system. So any AI system needs data to improve over time. But in the lab, big companies, they can collect data, but these data are biased. It's not really what every human users want. So that's the problem. And then when we think about if we want to build a product that everyone can use, what's the best way to build it? What's the best place? And we notice everyone has computers, everyone has devices. What if we can transform all of these computers into autonomous ones? like AGI, right? Like AGI system, that creates a feedback loop. Whenever the agent or the computer like interacting with human, it's the experience. This is the experience for human. It's also the experience for the agent. And these become valuable data the agent can keep learning over time and grow with it. And gradually, this can bootstrap the AI system towards the AGI in the future.
Let's talk really quickly about that concept of AGI that we won't recognize it. I mean, the assumption of artificial general intelligence, AGI, is that we will know it as a human-like intelligence to a degree. But what you're suggesting is that the human-like intelligence, it might not be there. It might be something completely different that we can't even recognize. At what point do we have AGI if we can't understand what it looks like?
So that's this is like an open, right? There are Turing tests for AGI. It's meaning like you're talking to a system, but you don't know whether that's human or AI system. And for now, if you talk to ChatGPT, if I ask ChatGPT, or can you find a book of flight for me or reserve a table, it probably won't do the job for you, right? Because it'll say I'm just a large language model. So then we know it's not a human. It's kind of like an AI system. But if we have autonomous computers, it can speak, it can act on the digital world. So that actually blurs the boundary even more. It's possible with just autonomous computers. We don't really know what the other side is, AI system or human. But yeah, this is an open question. I would say it's an open question. But why we want to open source research? Why we want to like do all of these innovations and explorations? The reason is we believe it's important for us to release immature technology early on, because this is leading to AGI. Human needs to be prepared when the day comes, right? When we have a real AGI system, we need to be prepared. So we don't want to like work on something that magically and suddenly like become AGI system and everyone is unprepared. So this also becomes the major reason why open source is important, because we give people the time, for us and for everyone else, the time and effort to actually study this system. Because we create this agent, this computer use agent. Sometimes we feel we don't know it very well because there are so many mechanisms happening under the hood that's based on probabilistic models, which is not really hard coded by our logic. So that's important for us to keep learning, creating the system and learning from the system at the same time, so we get more and more clear about the future roadmap, about how to interacting with AGI system in the future. For now, it's already publicly downloadable. We make it really simple. You download it and then you type any queries you want. You can see how the agent is doing on the website. And it's not going to do everything for you. As I mentioned, AGI is not there. We don't have AGI right now. The agent is not capable for sure. It's 40%, still big gap from human level, but it can do something useful already today.
Okay, very cool. Well, Ang, thank you for joining us. This has been fascinating. I'm actually fascinated by this concept of it's not a Turing test, it's a tool test actually at this point, where if the interaction with the computer or the object is the same as when a human does it, that's an interesting idea of it's an interesting.
Yeah, it's also, I feel it's technical wise, it's also easier in the long term, because many of the current agents, they are actually calling a bunch of APIs, a lot of APIs, right? And these agents, from my opinion, they are not really agents. They are more like enhanced chatbots, enhance the ChatGPT with tool calling, right? But the problem for those agents is that you always need human engineers to write API for you. Do we have the resource or effort or time to write APIs for everything in the digital world? Probably not, right? Even if it's possible, do we want to spend that effort just for writing APIs? What if we have a system that can just use mouse and keyboard doing all of the tasks? That potentially become the API of the future, right? That computer is the API.
And the interesting thing that yeah. I mean, the interesting thing you're talking about is there's some systems that aren't actually connected to the internet, that are not actually connected to it, that have been coded back in the 80s, 90s, that are still in use. And if you can actually have the machine use those, there's all kinds of crazy stuff here. It's fascinating. I'm really glad we glad we got to talk.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
All right, this has been Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next episode.